It's real easy. All corporations have presidents and a secretary and a treasurer as a minimum. Does the United States of America have a president, secretary, and treasurer? Of course, because if you read the preamble, you will see that every single element is needed for a trust. You have the trustors, that's the people. You have the trustees, that's the United States of America. You have the task to be done by the trust, it lists them there. It has the authority by which it exists, it's ordained and established. That's everything you have in a trust. So it's a trust. All corporations are trusts. Whether it's a corporation for profit, a non-profit corporation, a trust that's actually called a trust, common law trust, for example, or Massachusetts trust, or if it's called the United States of America, it's still a trust. And so, there we have it there. Now, what did we the people do? Well, we ordained and established. What's the legal meaning of ordain and establish? Ordain means to make law. It is by our sovereign authority that we people authorized the existence of the United States of America. And to establish means to actually write it on paper. We created the paperwork. So, we have the authority and we have the actual document for them to read. So, that is what establishes it. Okay? Now, again, I don't know what the people are, but I know what the relationship is. We, the people, are the authorizers. We decreed the law. And the law is that the United States of America shall exist, and we established it with the written document. So, even though I cannot tell you what people are, or what this people is, I can sure tell you my relationship with the United States of America. And the very line of logic, the reasoning that I gave you, also applies to the state constitutions. You read them, you'll see. It says in the preambles. You know, the attorneys, you ask an attorney, what's the preamble, what's the significance in the Constitution? You say, oh, well, that's just an introductory thing. Well, actually, he's right, if you subject yourself to the Constitution. But if you stay outside the Constitution, if you decree that you yourself are one of the people, then you're outside. It doesn't apply to you. Okay? And that's my assumption. That's what I do when I go to court. When I open up in court, when I open up a case, and I'll show you here. I'm going to go to that example. Okay? And we'll go down to the First Amendment action because the original action really wasn't any good. First Amendment action, okay? Here it is, Superior Court of California, County of Calamity. Now, the first paragraph was necessary because this is an amended action and it replaced the original action in its entirety. But the second paragraph would normally be the first paragraph. Look what it says. William Jones, hereinafter plaintiff, is one of the people of California, and in this court of record complains of blah, blah, blah. Those two things, plaintiff and court of record, that's the key. You don't have to say you're sovereign. You don't have to say God's on your side. You don't have to say that you have higher authority. You don't need it. You are the higher authority. Okay? The first part, being one of the people, that establishes your sovereignty. That's all you have to do, is you say you're one of the people. That's it. You're now sovereign. And check this out. Who's accusing you of being one of the people? Yourself. Right? You don't have to prove anything about yourself. The only time proof is needed is when one person accuses another person. If somebody chooses to tell me I'm not one of the people, guess what? Now they have to provide the proof. The presumption is I am whatever I say I am. Okay? It's their responsibility as accusers is to prove I'm not one of the people. And if they try to put up some flaky contract, if they try to say, well, you have a Social Security number, you have a driver's license, blah, 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 I'll say, okay, how does that make me not one of the people? Because people are sovereign automatically, say by that, if you have that label. How do you pull me out of that? It's their responsibility to prove. You understand that? Prove that I'm not one of the people. Okay? And if they try to say, well, it's because of the contract, I'll say, well, where does it say that in the contract? And then they reach into some remote statute somewhere, let's say, and they find it and they say, well, this is it. Well, now you know under international law and local law and common law, every legal system there is, you know that for a valid contract, it has to be entered into knowingly, right? Intelligently, right? And if the other party in the contract knows something that you don't know, and if he knows you don't know, and he fails to disclose it to you, that's fraud. And therefore the contract's no good anyway. So I don't worry about the fact that, by the way, I do have a Social Security number. By the way, I do have a driver's license, although it is signed without prejudice. I think some of you can appreciate that. Okay? Without prejudice is the UCC 1-207, or under California UCC it's 1207, that reserves your rights. And so I reserve my rights. So they pull this on me, I say, well, wait a minute, yeah, that may be the contract manual, but where does it say that I'm beholden to you in all areas of society? And besides, I'm not engaged in commerce anyway. But that's another issue. Okay, so what I'm pointing out to you is that when you open up your lawsuit, you say you're one of the people and in this court of record. And I'm going to explain the court of record. And I've gone into a lot about this people because this is critical to the strategy. You've got to understand that if you're a people, you are sovereign automatically. You are above the government because the government it exists by my authority. That judge on the bench has no authority to overtake me unless I grant it to him. Okay? That's why I'm able to vacate his orders. That's one of the reasons. There's actually a couple more reasons. Okay, so going back to the principles, the theory, we go to the law notes. And people are citizen. Which one are you? Now, I'm going to contrast this with being a citizen of the United States, because I've explained the preamble, and now you understand that the preamble is the fork in the road. The preamble is where you choose. Are you going to go into the Constitution, under it, and accept its authority, or are you going to remain outside the Constitution as one of the owners of the country? Okay? Do you own the country, or does the country own you? Well, I go in as one of the owners. Okay. So now we have let's go further down here. By the way, I explain right here the structure of the preamble, who the trustor is, the venue, the purpose, the beneficiary. So if you want to know more, read the CD. But there's some interesting things to back you up in terms of case law. Now understand one thing. You have a structure here. You have the people. Underneath the people, you have the Constitution. Under the Constitution, you have the legal system. Okay, the statutes and the codes. Okay, and the Admiralty Law. The Admiralty Law draws its strength from this Constitution also. That's their authority to act. Then under that, you have the slaves. Some people call them citizens of the United States. Okay? So, but if you're one of the people, Look what they said in New York in a case here that happened 1829. The people of this state, as the successors of its former sovereign, are entitled to all the rights which formerly belonged to the king by his prerogative. You want to know what your rights are? Don't ask me. I can't tell you. You are the only one who knows what your rights are. The Bill of Rights is not your resource. It's nice that there's some things listed in the Bill of Rights that I like, but those aren't my rights. My rights are whatever I, in my sovereign capacity, by my own prerogative, decide they are. Pretty powerful concept, isn't it? Okay? So, that's the key thing. Formerly belonged to the king by his prerogative. Okay? So, there's other supporting case law, but I thought that might cover it sufficiently. Now, what is sovereign? What does that mean, sovereign? Well, let's skip a little further down. Let's see, I got a good one here, if I can find it. Let's see. Okay, I don't find it here, but that's not unusual. I usually cannot find things when I'm, performing. But what it basically, there is a case which basically says that the very essence of sovereignty is that the sovereign makes law. Okay? If you want to prosecute somebody, you don't have to have a statute. All you have to do is say it's wrong, whatever their action is. Now, I have a personal hang-up as a sovereign, okay? I am really offended if anybody wears pink shoes in my presence. As a matter of fact, I'm so offended that I attach a death penalty to it, okay? I don't tolerate pink shoes. I hope none of you are wearing pink shoes now, because it's really a bad deal. Okay? Now, if somebody were wearing pink shoes, what I would do is I'd prosecute, of course. That's what kings do. Well, as it turns out, in our system of common law, you're entitled as a defendant to call in a jury. And what's the job of the jury? Well, the jury has two jobs. One job you always hear about. They judge the facts, right? Do the facts conflict with the law? They don't tell you the other one, and that is that it's your job to also judge the law. Now, what do you think the probability is that in my court I could gather together a jury that would support my anti-pink shoe law? Okay? Yeah, they're not really too good, and I happen to know that as a king, so I've been a little slow about enforcing that law. On the other hand, let's say somebody walks up to you and really gives you a black eye, really slugs you, okay, unprovoked, they just came out of nowhere and did it. And then you brought charges against them, and you decreed in your lawmaking that A, it's wrong to poke somebody in the eye without provocation, and B, the penalty's 30 days in jail. What do you think the chances are that I could get a conviction from a jury? I'd say they'd be pretty high. In your gut, you know that's good law. So that's the beauty of the jury system, the custom and usage, and that's the protection for the defendant and the great leveler, the stabilizer in our common law. And they used it a lot during the early days of this country. And so, we the people don't need statutes. We just need common sense. If you want to bring the Bible in, you want to quote a passage from the Bible, and you decree that this is the law of this case, that's fine. And by the way, that's what I do. I have a section in my lawsuit. It always says the law of the case is. You know how it is when you appeal a case, and they tell you that, well, if you didn't bring it up, then they cannot consider it? That's the law of the case. And they call it that, the law of the case.